Hi, this is Sam Agresti with Brady Ware Dealership Advisors, and I want to welcome everyone to the April webinar. This month we're focusing on DMS systems, and we're very fortunate to have Sandi Jerome, who's many of you know as a DMS guru. A little bit about Sandi: she started in dealership since she was 14 years old, and has probably worked in every area of a dealership, including being the controller CFO for one of the largest Chevy and Dodge dealers in the five-state areas. So Sandi brings a lot of knowledge to the DMS area, and has published several articles, spoken at NADA, has developed a super controller self-study guide. So her credentials go on, and actually owns her own DMS system called DealerStar. So we're very excited to have Sandi with us this month, and we're going to be discussing DMS comparison and how to determine which one's right for you. So with that, I'll turn it over to Sandi.
Well, great. Well, thank you, Sam, and thank you for inviting me, and welcome everyone. I know most of you are here today, have tuned in today because you maybe have an upcoming decision to make about your DMS needs. So some of you may wonder, first of all, CDK's new Flex system, is that right for you? You may have seen that in NADA and be wondering, what is that? Should you stay with Reynolds or Reynolds? And talk about some reasons to stay, reasons to leave. DealerTrack DMS. Now, you may have switched to that over the last 10 years. Will they overcome their lack of features compared to CDK and Reynolds or Reynolds? And then, did you see something you like at NADA? Something shiny and pretty and new? And there's quite a few choices. Obviously, AutoSoft, Automate, PBS, and like Sam said, even our own DealerStar, although we're not actively looking for customers right now. But let's talk about the big three, the ones we all know: DealerTrack, CDK, Reynolds and Reynolds. First of all, we'll talk about DealerTrack, which is what I still call the old Arcona system that DealerTrack paid. Actually, Cox paid $4 billion for the DealerTrack, which included the Arcona system. So one of the recent things that happened there is that some of you may have heard of that Asbury large group. They left their beloved Reynolds and Reynolds system. They went to Arcona. It failed, and then now they're on CDK. The last that I've heard. Might be able to be corrected on that, but that's the last I've heard. Now, the DealerTrack Arcona system lately, it was originally selected because of price. It had a really good price. It was $1,500 a month, and it was starting to get acceptance. You could go to 20 group meetings and say you have Arcona or DealerTrack, and nobody groaned or anything. But now as they've been growing, they've had some issues with trying to catch up with those features that dealers want. And then, of course, the support. Anytime someone grows, it's hard to support that many users, and we're seeing that price starting to creep up. Now, this system is considered now the stepchild, because if you look at the progression there, Arcona, which was in Salt Lake City, got bought by the company in New York, and then the New York company got bought by the company in Atlanta, Cox Automotive. So now we're seeing the DMS is like way down as a stepchild. Going into the big boy, which is CDK after the ADP spinoff, it has a cap value of about $7 billion, and that's billion, not million, but billion now. And they've been trying to take it private, and problem is they want $11 billion for it. The cap value is between 7 and 8. So all the little suitors that came along have kind of backed off a little bit, starting in February, and we're seeing that stock coming down, reflecting that it had gotten up as high as in the 70s. I think it's about in the high 50s maybe right now. Because of that investment from that spinoff, where you have stockholders now and you have large major investors, there's a lot of pressure in CDK for profits. In fact, all three companies are under pressure for profits, and they need to increase revenue. Well, one of the first places that they're looking for is starting to restrict the data, and they charge money for it. It's kind of been an old thing that we saw with the old UCS system. You know, they always wanted to charge you if you wanted to get the data off the system. But now kind of everybody out there wants some money to interface with that system. Now, CDK tried to buy Automate last year. It got turned down by the FTC. So they turned around and said, now we're going to offer a new system that we've developed called Drive Flex. and they bought Ely's, one of the top three largest CRM companies, to kind of, I guess, make up for the hurt that they felt from not being able to get the Automate DMS. And then lastly, we have Reynolds and Reynolds, which is, I always say, it really is UCS. UCS merged with Reynolds and Reynolds, but it's actually controlled by the UCS people. And I always like to tell this little story is that the feeling about the emotional feeling that dealers have with UCS because of all the lawsuits, and there was even a lawsuit that got settled, and one of the settlement is that the dealer had to put an advertisement in automotive news that said, I was wrong, I was only suing UCS to get an advantage. And when dealers see that, they go, oh my God, this poor dealer, why did he have to do that? But I once had a dinner party, and I had a couple dealers there, and I had invited someone, a friend of mine that worked for UCS. He walked in the door and he said, hi, I'm so-and-so with UCS. And one of the dealers flew across the room and said, Bob Brockman is the devil himself. And everyone just was shocked. They just stopped and froze. And I said, oh, no, don't go bother him, please. He's just a tech. He probably has never even met Bob Brockman. And so he settled down, realized, oh, okay, he's just a technician. But right after the merger of UCS and Reynolds, they broke the deal of the IDMS contract with GM. So there'd been a little bad blood there. And after that, as a consultant, we went to UCS. Actually, a couple of us went to UCS, and we were sitting around a table. And it was right after the merger, and the Reynolds and Reynolds people were there too. It's actually called a consultant day, and they were there, and they're walking by, and I kind of waved to them, and two of the UCS people were at our table, and one turns to the other and says, oh God, that system's a piece of junk. And I turned, and then they got up and left, and I turned to my friend, a fellow consultant, and said, oh my gosh, are they going to kill the most beloved system, the Reynolds and Reynolds system? But for now, we're still seeing the two systems alive, doing well. They've put an overlay on it called Ignite. They put the overlay on their old one called Power. But we're thinking that overlay will give them that look and feel of being one system, which has always been UCS's goal. So why are these DMS systems so old? I know a lot of you, maybe you're just coming into the dealership area, and you know technology backwards and forwards, and you log on to these DMS systems, and you go, oh my God, this is just so terrible. Well, for me, everything is new. It looks so nice and shiny new. Because I'm so old that, we kept the parts inventory on 3x5 cards when I started in the business when I was 14 years old. And then we had stock cards. They were actually 5x7, and that was the new and used car inventory. And back then, the general ledger, we used posting machines to create the general ledger. And we did have a little bit of computerization in the F&I office, kind of a weighing system that would calculate the contract, and then my gosh, they got a printer and it started printing it. I was very excited because I was the one that used to type the contract. So our first generation DMS systems in the 1980s just basically had parts inventory and accounting and a very slight AR AP. That's where we started out in. The next generation was because of the manufacturer and because we wanted to do more invoicing. So we added parts invoicing into parts inventory so that we could create parts invoices on the DMS, and we integrated the system into accounting. Then we added service invoicing. So when parts started doing invoices, the service department wanted to do it. Then we added parts ordering and parts pricing and the financial statement and warranty claims because we started that integration to the manufacturer. So we moved, and some of these names may sound familiar, we moved from VIN to ERA, and then we went from Elite into Drive. But what this has done is caused a lot of patchwork, and so that's why that system seems so old. It was all put together in little pieces way back in the 1980s. So the big four then, there were actually four big DMS companies, which is ADP, which is CDK now, Reynolds and Reynolds, and UCS, and then there was EDS. And that is actually the big EDS, the HRS Perot had that company, but they actually had a small division called the Automotive Retail Group. So during this time through the 1980s and 90s, they started growing through acquisitions. And see, this is what happened with CDK. They were going to acquire Automate that had a lot of dealers on this system by now. And so back in there, back in the 1980s and 90s, the FTC really wasn't involved in these mergers and acquisitions. So they went out and bought Cars, Dytron, VCREST. These names may sound familiar to some of you. Coin, Display Data. FDCS was the Ford system that was acquired by UCS. And so that's how they grow. They would actually acquire these, and then they would kill that technology. In fact, even when ADP got VCREST, I went to the meeting at NADA afterwards, and they said, no, we're going to keep the VCREST system. And it was 6 months later they killed it. So that's how they grew, because they wanted to acquire those users. They also grew by acquiring technology. So we kind of redefined a DMS system because Reynolds & Reynolds went out and bought a CRM company called DealerKit, and CDK went out and bought a CRM company called Automotive Directions. And they created these business users, especially ADP or CDK, and they would call it an ADP company. So they bought a computer company called Alliance, which is now their Web 1000 or their Dash system, and they would call that an ADP company. But they were buying everything, the technology and the old DMS system, for the number of users, not the technology. Now the third generation came along, and going back to the question, why are they so old, is they tried to bring these things up a little bit faster. And so ADP purchased Dealer Solutions, or CDK purchased Dealer Solutions for about $53 million. And this was a Microsoft system on Visual Basic. Didn't work out for them. They killed that system after 12 clients went on. Reynolds & Reynolds spent somewhere between 60 and 90 million to develop what they called their suite system. It was based on Microsoft Dynamics, and they killed that system after 25 clients went on. But that caused a lot of stockholder resentment, and it made it ripe for a takeover by UCS. EDS, which one of my favorite little ones, that was for the Saturn dealers. They came in and added a new system called FMS, but then CDK or ADP bought EDS, just the automotive retail portion, and then they killed that. So why did this not work for them bringing a new DMS to market? Well, one thing that they did is they went out and they got software that was developed for other industries and tried to modify it, like Microsoft Dynamics. And recently, Dominion did that a couple years ago. They had a Microsoft Dynamics version. I think they called it DMS AX, and they killed that project because it's just too hard to modify software that's made for other industries. The other problems was performance and speed and trying to add all the features to the DMS. Now remember, ADP, CDK, Reynolds & Reynolds, they've been working at this 30, 40 years. So they have, labor grid pricing and core tracking. When you're coming new to the market and try to add all those features, even DealerTrack struggles with this because they're coming later to the game. The other thing was the performance. One of the issues is that when they brought the suite product, when Reynolds & Reynolds bought that suite product to market, one of the things when I first looked at it as a consultant is I said, you mean I can only run schedules at night? And they said, yes, you can't run them during the middle of the day. They build at night. So you have to request them during the day. They build at night, and then tomorrow you can actually run your schedules. And I said, well, that can't work. I mean, that's a deal breaker. You can't have a DMS system where you can't run a schedule today. Look at a schedule. You can't, I work for dealers. They have a sense of urgency that nobody else can explain. And so when I actually met some of the development people from the original era group, I said, why did you let them bring something to market, the suite product where you could run your schedules at, only at night for the next day? And they said, well, we tried to tell them, and they wanted to work on their own. And so that's one thing, is that when they develop these new products, they don't have the development teams bring in the legacy people that know what we need out there. I mean, we're very particular about the way we want our DMS system to run. So they went back to what works. Okay, so that's why we have a patchwork of technology. One DMS, there's 13 different ways to exit a screen. And I don't mean that every one of the 13 ways works throughout the system. I'm saying that if you're on a particular system, that the only way to exit that screen is to use one of the 13 ways, and there's 13 different ways. So they took the old screen and they said, we want to call it Windows, so what we're going to do, what I actually call is lipstick on a pig. Let's put an overlay on top. and call it Windows. And so that's what they did. We have now these GUI interfaces that lay on top of our original DMS system. For CDK, it's called the Drive system, or it's called the Dash system if you're on the Alliance. And I have to say, we're going to talk a little bit here about Flex. Is that I sent about 10 people to NADA because I could not attend, and I had them go look at Flex. And so when they came back, I asked them, is Flex a new DMS or is it a different overlay? And all of them agreed that one thing is Flex is now deployed on the new platform that it's actually kind of like a big server that CDK created out there. So that's one, and I think it's called Fortuous or something. So it has an odd name for me to pronounce, but that's one thing, is that it is deployed on the new server. It does have the element that they're going to charge per usage, and that made me kind of gasp because, that's back. I'm so old that when we used to be online with ADP and Reynolds, we actually were charged by every line, every journal line, everything. That's how we were billed for the system. There may be a couple people in the audience that are looking at each other and going, yeah, I remember that. You never knew what your DMS bill was going to be. So I'm wondering, what is their thought on that? But they're thinking, well, then that way as a dealership grows, they'll start paying more, but they could get into the system for less. So when they came back, I actually only had, I think, only one person out of the people I sent that came back and really felt it was a complete new DMS. All the rest felt it was an overlay, but we still don't know. We won't know until we actually are able to see some at dealerships, or someone sees an email on what is the new CDK Flex system. AutoMate calls their overlays SalesMate, OfficeMate, and then puts an overlay on the system. DealerTrack just recently changed it, so they have all these little buttons or these little square boxes on the first thing, and it's called the Cox Bridge, and they called it DMS 2.0. And it's just an overlay that makes it easier for you to move from the F&I system, that belonged to DealerTrack, to the DMS system, which is the Arcona system. And actually it makes a way to be able to join the rest of the Cox family products. Reynolds, like I mentioned, the UCS version is called Power. The ERA system's called Ignite. And then DBC and Dubuque, we're still waiting to hear what's going to come up with their overlays. They both have been purchased by another DMS company. So back to our decisions. Is Flex right for you? Are you considering that? And I have to say, based on, and this is just my opinion, so based on what happened in the third generation on trying to move to a new system, I'd have to say I would wait. I would wait a couple of years for that before, unless you're just one of those trailblazers that says, I don't care about, cutting edge. I don't mind being on bleeding edge technology. Should you stay on Reynolds and Reynolds? And, I've always said this, if it isn't broken, you'd have to have some compelling reasons to leave. And usually it's a price out there. Now, so many people, one of the reasons why DealerTrack and the alternative systems grew is that when Bob Brockman merged UCS into Reynolds and Reynolds and kind of took it over, a lot of people jumped ship. And I always say this is that, I don't know who owns Chrysler. I've tried to keep track of it and stuff like that. But I love my Pacifica van, and I loved my Town & Country that I had before it. I didn't care who owns it. I love the product. Reynolds & Reynolds is a beloved product. People love it. I like it. I think it's a great system. So, if it isn't broken and you can afford it, then, why should you want to change? I mean, changing is really, really, really hard. DealerTrack, I'm not seeing, if we'd had this webinar a year ago, I would have said, they're really coming up to it. They're making it. But I think in the last update that I saw on it, there's only like 4 new features, and they used to give me like a whole page. We'd have a whole page of new features. So I'm seeing that slowing down, but there's still features that are missing from that system. And if there's that one feature that you need that makes a difference on making more money in parts and service or sales, that's hard. Or if it's a feature that you need to better account for your business and be able to, have internal control, prevent fraud and things like that, then it's a big feature that you're missing. And as far as being ready for an alternative DMS, there's lots of choices out there. And we'll look at some of these choices right now. lots of DMS systems. I don't know if someone can count them up and tell me what they are, but a lot of DMS systems out there. At the top, we have our two tier one systems, Reynolds and CDK. Then we go into DealerTrack, which we start moving into the tier 2 and 3 systems. Dominion has now they've actually come out with a new system called View, and it's kind of like the Drive Flex. We don't know if that's the old Access system. We know they killed the Microsoft Dynamics one, and we know that they're on Visual Fox Pro, which ended its support with Microsoft in 2015. So we don't know if the View is a rewrite or if it's a modification of the old Access system into something new. If you do know that, please send me an email, which we'll be showing at the end of this. AutoSoft is doing a rewrite of their system. Automate is, suffering from those couple years that they were getting bought by CDK. Now they're back on their own, so that's always a problem when dealers, knew that you were selling and now you're not. The Atom, the DDS, the Dubuque, the DPC, the Dubuque, the Atom. These are ones that were recently bought by other companies. I have a little bit of concern with those. Proceed, which is for the truck market. Now we're into the blue area, which are Microsoft-based systems. And a lot of people always say, when are we going to have a Microsoft-based system? We have one for many, many years, MPK, which is on the Microsoft Nav product, PBS out of Canada, Quorum out of Canada, and Lightyear, which is now called Dealer Built. And then we have our two newest systems, which is Advent DMS out on the West Coast, and here on the East Coast we have DealerStar. And so the first question you may ask is that, do I need to stay on Reynolds or Reynolds? Because I see a lot of people switch off of Reynolds and CDK, a tier 1 system, and go down into the tier 2, the DealerTrack, the AutoSoft, the PBS, and they really suffer from it. So let's look at some of what is a tier 1 system. So a tier 1 system, I kind of rank it in 4 areas. One is that it's integrated versus interface CRM, which I'll explain in a second. And do you have a report writer? Do you have advanced features? And that's the number one thing, is the advanced features that you have that keep, let's say, maybe a DealerTrack system not on the same level as Reynolds and CDK. And true multiple company, which I'll explain that in a second. So CRM, integrated or interface. So if you are a dealer, let me do an example here. Let's say you're a dealer on a PBS system and you have VIN Solution. Well, that's most likely going to be what we call interface, which means that PBS sends customers to VIN Solutions. They upload them. They may go by FTP or by web services, but it's not live. And so does it matter if your dealership calls a customer to make a service appointment and there they are sitting on the showroom floor? Sorry about that. They really wouldn't be sitting on the showroom floor. They'd be sitting at a desk or at a table on the showroom floor. But does that matter if they email a lead? And this actually happened to my daughter-in-law. She just had bought the car, and then they sent her an email offering her 10 free gallons of gas if she'd come by and test drive. Well, she went down and got it because she's a teacher on a limited salary. Do they send a reduction in payment offer, which we call the equity mining, to a customer that just paid cash for a car last week or for yesterday? So, does that matter? And that's the difference between an interface, which is sharing data going back and forth by FTP or web services, often a day late, or integrated where it's actually part of the DMS system. The next thing is the report writer. And I like to measure this in 3 levels. And the tier 1s have level 1, which means we have access to the main database files. We can use dynamic security to write reports that select fields based on certain criteria. Now, we're seeing that maybe go away. I know that with CDK right now, when you try to run big reports, they block you out of it. Then you got to email them. And then Era went from AeraLink, which I absolutely loved and helped name, into Era Access, and now we have the dynamic reporting. But, are we going to lose that in our tier 1? I think it's very important to have the report writer. The next level report writer is that when you're seeing something on the screen, you can filter it and say, I'm looking at a whole list of checks, but I only want the ones that are over $1,000. And then I can click and export that to Excel. And then the lowest level of a report writer is I'm looking at a report, it's on the screen, I can click one click and export that to Excel. So that's one of the things that if we really want to go and become paperless system, we need a full, robust 3-level report writing. And then we're going to talk about all the different features. Certainly, there's a tremendous amount of features that, for those of you that did change DMS systems, I think it's an emotional thing that you say, well, I lost this. I used to be able to do this, and I lost it. And so what you need to do is that you actually need to create your list of all the things that you lost so that the next time that you consider a DMS system, you can make sure that they have them. And some of those things are pricing matrices with escalators. And what an escalator means is that if I sell a part and it only costs, let's say, 10 cents, and I'm going to sell it for 60 cents, I'm not going to mark it up only 20% or 30%. I'm going to mark it up 100% because the part is what we call a nuisance part. We also do that escalation in ordering, is that if we have that part, and it may be the part that we need to fix a transmission job, well, instead of only ordering 2 of them, I'm going to order 20 of them so that we never run out of a tiny part and keep a large transmission job from not being able to be done. Core tracking, which is making sure that the technicians are notified that they owe you a core, tracking that core. Things like the labor grid pricing, some DMS systems have it, some of them don't. Getting down into the things like the online schedules, being able to reconcile your schedules online and have it generate journal vouchers for you. An overtime watch where you can actually watch and be notified if an employee is going into an overtime status. So a tremendous amount of features, and this is what actually divides the Tier 1 systems from the Tier 2 and the Tier 3 systems. So we'll talk right now about the multiple company. So multiple company is that the most common way that people are saying, and I've seen even Tier 3 systems claim that they're multiple company because they have combined reporting. You'll see the little red there in the middle of the screen. And that's what they say is their multiple company. But to actually say true multiple company would be is that, that's why the big balloon man there. Let's say we're going to rent one of these silly balloons to put on top of the dealership. And that balloon is going to be shared by all 3 of my dealerships. Okay, 3 dealerships that are right next to each other are going to share the cost of it. And so in true intercompany, when I type that check, it debits the expense account of all 3 dealerships. If you look at the chart there, and if you look at the area that has the yellow on it, and it says store number 1, store number 3, and store number 5, it's actually debiting their expense accounts for the amount of the balloon. They're not debiting intercompany or ARAP. That's other people claim to have intercompany because it debits the AR. But we all know that until we actually reconcile the accounts receivable, the accounts payable between all of our different companies, we don't really have true intercompany. We just have a war going on between them because someone typed a check and charged it to my accounts receivable, and I didn't set up the payable. So that's true intercompany. It actually makes those background entries. It makes what I call the direct entries. And then goes a little bit further. You see the line description. It actually puts in there balloon, balloon, balloon. True intercompany puts that description in there. Kind of quasi-intercompany puts in something like intercompany transaction. So that's what you really want. So if you go up to the top again, what is multiple company? It allows accounts payable to write 1 check, pay 1 vendor, okay, instead of having to write 3 checks. It allows an accounts receivable to have a combined AR statement. So if all 3 of your stores deal with Napa Auto Parts, you can create 1 AR statement for Napa Auto Parts. Payroll, it allows, just like this check, direct distribution. So it means that when I pay this employee, it's going to go to the expense account of store number 5. It's not going to go to the AR account. And it'll also correctly distribute the payroll taxes that belong to that employee. It allows me to make stock transfers, and that may be a stock transfer of a part or a vehicle, so that I can move cars between dealerships without having to key them back in again. And then you have your one enterprise view of the major tables. You're able to look or search on all the parts in all my dealerships, all the vehicles in all my dealerships, and all the customers in all my dealerships. Now, some of the tier 2 and 3s do that level. They'll do some sort of that combined reporting and that combined view of all those things, but they don't do the true, what I call nitty gritties down to the bottom level of doing the true intercompany transactions. So a tier 1 system, up in the upper left-hand corner, basically the dealership perception of a tier 1 system like CDK or Reynolds and Reynolds is it's a higher cost and we don't have any control and it's slower to respond to new technology. So tier 1 systems have those 4 factors, and our current ones are CDK. It's Reynolds UCS, both their Ignite and Power system. And then, because I'm here to sing a little bit for my supper, it's our company, DealerStar. Because we came late to the game, we knew the bar that we had to meet. We had to create those and do those 4 main features. So our third generation DealerStar, and like I said, we're not trying to sell you the system. We already have a waiting list, and number 4 there of over 200 dealers. But just trying to make people aware of it today. We feel we're easier to use. We built it on modern tools, so we have a modern GUI. It's faster, it costs less. It's fully web-based, and we have 2 patents for that. We've been installed for over 5 years, so we're kind of the best kept secret out there. We're well funded by dealers. Dealers own us. We have factory integration certification, GM, Kia, Volkswagen, working on Chrysler, Honda, Ford. We already have quite a few dealers that are waiting for it, and most of them are waiting for us to acquire. Let's say they have a Ford and a Hyundai, not a Honda dealership, and so they need those 2 combinations, and that's actually the one that we're going to work on next. Because we're dealer and invested owned, and because of the failure of the FTC approving the Automate, we don't expect to be purchased by the big 3, and we expect those big 3. I'm the one person that was the last person that would have ever believed that UCS would buy Reynolds and Reynolds. I just thought they were too big for that to have happened. So I don't think that in our big 3 we're going to see one buying another. We might see like Reynolds maybe buying a CRM company because CDK just did. We're multiple currency, doesn't really matter to you unless you're in Canada or Mexico. We're multiple language, again, doesn't matter to you. Oh wait, no, Canada speaks English. We think they speak kind of English, but and we sell across the world with international resellers. We currently are installed in Haiti and Australia and throughout the Caribbean. We have CRM included, or we have what's called integrated CRM. We integrate with Dealer Team and we integrate with Dealer Socket. And we like to think that we have a lot of the features. The items are in blue because you were probably wondering, which system have this and which system have that. If you go to our website and you download the features, you'll kind of see a list of all the available features out there. And when you're evaluating a DMS system, you can kind of say, oh, I need fixed assets. Do you have fixed assets? Or I need true intercompany transactions. Do you have that? Do you have menus, or do I have to buy a third-party menu system? So those are our features that we have on it. We've kind of run out of time here. If you do have a question that we don't get to answer today, we're going to open up for questions. But if we don't get to answer it today, you can always email me at sandy@sandyjerome.com. I no longer do consulting. I no longer help people pick one from the other because obviously having DealerStar, I'm no longer considered to be independent, but I will always answer your question about it. I might not have the right answer, but I'll always answer your questions. So Sam, do we have any questions today?
Yes, Sandy, we actually do. We have a couple questions here from the audience. So the first one is, I know a lot of dealers switch from R+R to CDK to another system like DealerTrack, AutoSoft, Automate, and it just isn't working out. So do you think they should go back to their old system or try something new?
Well, if I didn't have a waiting list, I'd say, well, try DealerStar. But first question they need to ask themselves is, was the breakup friendly? Obviously going back to the old system is attractive because the employees like the old system probably, but was the breakup friendly? So when they left their previous DMS system, were they treated okay, or were they beat up horribly? did the previous DMS system, did they help you get your data, or did they not prevent you from getting your data? And did they have a plan where you could use their old system for a few months? So, was the divorce a friendly divorce in the settlement of who gets to keep, who gets the kids? So the next thing is that a dealer needs to reflect him back, why did you leave them in the first place? And has that been resolved? If it's price, which is our number one reason, are you going to get a better price? Because we've been in good times. You may think we have the luxury right now to afford to go back to them, but we're heading into an economic downturn. So if it was price before, why would you go back to one that was so expensive? You maybe want to look at someone else. And then support. What if was your support good before? Was that one of the reasons why you left them? And has that improved? So hopefully that answers the question.
Thank you, Sandy. The next question we have is on one of the slides you asked, are you ready for an alternative DMS? How can I tell if my dealership is ready to make the switch?
Well, that's easy. They're never ready. Employees don't like change. I mean, it's really hard. I mean, that's why when dealers are making a change, I'd always say, are you sure you're ready for this? It's 6 months of, terrible disruption of the business. So the first thing I always say, is it a good time? I've had dealers that were switching when they were building a new facility and moving into a new facility. Bad time. I've had dealers that switched when the controller had just quit and they were hiring and training a new one. Another time, bad time. Are you really ready? Is there going to be a big enough savings? And I like to say you got to save at least 30% for you to move from this one to that one, unless you're already in one of the alternative systems and it's just not cutting it. So let's say you really step down and we're into one that's only costing you $1,000 a month, but it's not going to cut it. Well, you can't save another 30%. So you just be looking at another one that's not that much more than that. But I'd have to say again, it's really the open to change. Are your employees open to change? Are they ready for it? Because I've seen employees quit because they changed DMS systems. So hopefully, Sam, that answers the question.
No, that's very good. I totally agree with you about the change. The last question, we want to be respectful of everyone's time, but the question is, if dealership cannot, or locked into a contract or something, and they can't change your DMS systems, what are some ways they can look at to reduce costs with the current DMS system?
Oh, excellent question, and delivered excellently by an accountant. So reducing costs. First of all, get rid of the non-DMS technology. I laugh when people actually ask me, as a DMS provider, do you have a phone system? And I just go, how is a phone system part of a DMS system? Where did that come up? Phone systems are cheap. I mean, you can get your local provider, support your local community, and get a great phone system. If you're saying, oh yeah, but I want it to interface, that's not really hard. That's, the phone system uses a text file. The DMS company can put it out there. You can put it out for the DMS companies. So for a DMS system to be selling you, a phone system, not too sure about that, and that may be something you want to save money on. And get rid of like the proprietary archiving. Again, DMS system, I mean, if it naturally archives like we do, it just, if they print it, it archives it. It's not proprietary. You can go back and get the PDF files. Look at the scanners, the signature pads, and a lot of things that are just not part of the DMS system, especially hardware that you're not even using anymore. And the next thing is get rid of the interfaces that don't make sense. So if you're being charged by your DMS company $700 a month for an interface to some small tool, that's getting very little use and it's getting very little data from the DMS, you may want to get rid of the tool and certainly the interface that you're paying for. So probably the first place to do is just to pull out that billing right now, and every single thing is saying, what is this, and what is that, and I'll go ahead and quantify reduce my email about the thing is that unfortunately I can't read everything on your billing, but if you do send me your billing, I'll do a stab on it on trying to say what it is, because these billings are terrible. They're pages upon pages of pages. But yes, I can, if you send me an email, I can, help identify what some of the stuff that is on that billing. So hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It sure does. I mean, it's always a major expense in dealers, and really want to thank Sandy for taking time out today to do this webinar for us. I do encourage anybody who does have some questions to reach out to her. She's surely the who we would reach out to, and really a guru with this stuff. And it's always a big expense, and to be able to utilize your DMS properly is always going to make your dealership operate better. So with that, I guess thank you for doing the webinar, Sandy. And I wish everyone to join us next month. We're going to discuss facility upgrades, another major expense of dealerships. And that's going to be on May 16th. Will be the next webinar, and it's going to be on how to handle facility upgrades from your manufacturer. So again, thanks for everyone attending today.